Hello, it's Karen Burniston here with an assembly video for one of our die sets. This is die number 1082, the Ice Cream Sundae pop-up, and you can check out all of our die designs at KarenBurniston.com. This die set was the suggestion and request of Karina, who handles our social media and customer service and happens to really love ice cream. So what's nice about this pop-up is that you get all of those pieces to be able to make that impressive pop-up ice cream sundae, but then you can also use it to make flat ice cream sundaes and cones. There are 9 individual dies in the set, and I'll start first with the pop-up die itself. You choose your card size. So for today's card, I will do an A2 outer card. That's 4 1/4 by 11, scored in the middle for folding. And then my inner card is 4 inches by 10.5 inches, also scored in the middle for folding. And it's the inner card that will get the pop-up cut into it. And to do that, I will align the alignment nubs right over that center fold of the card, use some temporary removable tape to keep that in place while I die cut. You can use any die cutting machine that can accommodate a wafer-thin die, and today I am using a Sizzix Big Shot. So this die is going to cut that pop-up right into that card, and then it will be folded up into the pop-up. But there is something a little different about this die, which is it actually cuts this little rectangle right through the card, and that will fall out. That's a little reinforcing tab, so you don't want to lose that. That's important to the pop-up. Okay, so let's look at the bottom half of this pop-up, which is that decorative ice cream dish. The fold that's in the card goes straight through the pop-up, but actually isn't part of the pop-up. So the fold for the dish itself is a little bit higher. So we have an extraneous fold, and then also it comes to a pretty narrow point at the stem of the dish, and that's just going to be a natural weak point in the pop-up, and that's what the rectangle is for. So step 1 is just to take that rectangle that was die cut with the pop-up and use a strong adhesive. Now you can use a strong double-sided tape or glue. I'm using my Lineco Neutral pH adhesive in my fine tip bottle, and we do sell both of those items on our website. And that rectangle is just going to move to become a vertical reinforcer for the stem of the dish. Later on, we'll add a decorative dish over the top of all of this, and then you won't see it. Let's start the folding by getting the dish itself to pop out into the card. So we want to take this outer cut line and find the top of it because there's a score that connects the two. We want to work that score as a valley, letting the center little tab just shoot through to the back of the card for now. Then we'll work the center fold of the dish, which is actually this fold here. So that should be a mountain. Ignore that extraneous fold by the rectangle. Remember, that's from the card itself. It has nothing to do with the dish. And instead go all the way down to where the dish connects to the card. So let me turn that sideways so you can see what we're working on here. There is a little tab that's sticking out the back, and that's fine. That's exactly where it should be for now. It's going to be too difficult just to fold the card close because the upper half is much stronger than the lower half. So instead you want to pull the upper half up into the card to close it. Okay, tab is on the back of the card for now, and we have a pop-up ice cream dish. Okay, so the tab is sticking out the back of the card right now, but we're about to work the folds for the upper box, and that will move that tab into the card. So to do that, we work on the back of the card, and you want to close this upper fold right here. Once it's closed, then you can grab the whole thing, see right there through both layers, and bring it up and give it a good pinch. And that will train that set of folds across the bottom so that when you open the card and then from the back you pop, that box will come into the card and the tab will move inward. And the idea is the tab is just going to stick up in the air. And with this pop-up, you do have to be in the habit of pulling everything towards the upper half of the pop-up. Right now, the lower half is just too weak to do the work for you. So you're going to have to use, your fingers in the pop-up and pull it upwards to really train those folds. Don't try to go this way because right now that ice cream dish isn't stiff enough yet. Okay, now we have a double box pop-up. And then we have 2 little platforms left, and they're the little angled platforms that hold the ice cream scoops. So they're sitting right in here and here. Now these are probably the most difficult just because you have to get into that second fold now from the back of the card. So we have to pinch this fold closed. So you kind of got to just find the angle where you can get your fingers in there And then what you want to do is just like we did with the upper one, you want to find the two platforms and you want to just push them until you're training the folds at the base. Now those folds are actually on a diagonal, so don't get concerned that as you push them, it looks like, oh, they're not folding straight. They're not supposed to. They have diagonal folds. So that step was just about training the folds. So those two little platforms need to be put back into position again so that you can open the card, and then from behind the piece you pop them, and then they will invert and fold into the card. Once again, you've got to pull this pop-up towards the upper half of your card as you close it. So you have to give it some help. Until we get that ice cream dish on, the lower half of the pop-up is not going to help you. So it's going to have to be you pulling the upper platforms closed. And now the folding of the pop-up is complete. I like to get the pop-up put into a backing card next before I decorate it. So for that, I just use a tape runner all over one half of the pop-up. Just make sure that the center fold is directly inside the center fold of my outer backing card, and then give everything a good press. Then I close the pop-up, add my tape runner all over the other half of the pop-up card, avoiding the pop-up itself, and then just close the card against the exposed adhesive. Now the backing card will go a long way towards making that lower half of the pop-up close on its own, but I would still be a little careful. Maybe put your thumb behind it as you close it until you get that ice cream dish on. So if you want to take advantage of the cool emboss features on some of the dies like the spoon and the dish, and you have brand new dies, my suggestion is that you emboss before you cut. So I've swapped out my machine to have an embossing sandwich which has that rubber mat underneath, and I roll it through and get the cool emboss feature on those two pieces, and then it's really easy to just sink those dies down into those lines, swap out my machine for a cutting sandwich, and then cut them. So always optional, of course, but I do like that emboss feature on both the spoon and the dish. Really gives a cool texture. Okay, I've decided on a Neapolitan sundae, so I have strawberry, vanilla, and chocolate ice cream, and then I'm going to add corresponding syrup colors to each of them. Okay, so I'm going to glue my ice cream now to my pop-up, and I usually like to start in the back. It doesn't really matter which color. I've decided on chocolate. And the back scoop will go on that upper little tab that's sticking up in the air. So a little bit of glue or a strong tape, and then just get that pressed to it. And then the other two scoops of ice cream are going to go on the two diagonal platforms. While both of those platforms are on the diagonal, they're actually on different angles, so that will help those ice cream scoops not crash into each other. And I've also found that if you use the second bump at the bottom as kind of the sweet spot that gets attached to the platform, that seems to be really good placement so that they don't end up crashing into each other or into the ice cream dish once you get that on. And I definitely recommend glue when you're adding your ice cream dish so that you can put it on the pop-up, avoiding the rectangle cutout, and really be generous with that glue, especially around that extraneous fold. You now want this ice cream dish that goes over the top to really, really stiffen up that bottom half of the pop-up and make it structurally equal to the upper half. So make sure that you really shellac that on there. And be patient with your glue because I never am. And I just immediately folded this and didn't give my stem a second to dry, so I can see that I put just a little ripple in it. I could either smooth that out, but actually I have plans to put ribbon around that stem for this card, so bonus, it'll cover that up. So my favorite spot for the spoon, if I want to tuck it into the sundae, is on the more angled ice cream scoop, which is on the left, and that's because I get a lot of travel to the spoon that way, because that's the more angled platform, which means it has more motion. The final four decorator pieces include a cherry that has a stencil feature for the catch light. There is a whipped cream that has a nice emboss feature if you want to run that through with your rubber mat. There is a die to cut a whole bunch of nuts for the top of your sundae, and for that piece I really like to use score tape on the back because then all of those little nuts become stickers. And then there is a cone die that has some nice texture in it, and that can be used to make standalone ice cream cones, or you can use the cone and actually add it to the sundae. I've decided on whipped cream on the back scoop, and then a cherry on vanilla, And then I'll add some of those nuts just kind of randomly all over the sundae. And then finish out by adding the cone attached to that back chocolate scoop of ice cream at a nice angle. So this card doesn't need much, but I'm going to add a little bit of pattern paper. This was just an older paper from my stash that I chopped up into a little piece for the top of the card. And then I'm going to cover the seam with one of our new border blends from the party set. And I also tied a ribbon bow around the stem of the ice cream dish. The same pattern paper and border for the bottom half of the card. Now I want a place to be able to sign and write a personal greeting, so I'll add one of our crosshatch circles. And then for a sentiment, I'll use the big script "You're Sweet" die. Okay, for the front of the card, I'm going to go back to those border blends and cut some more. And this time I'm going to take advantage of those tabs that allow you to put those borders together and create new borders in the space between. And you can watch a separate video on the border blends to really see how they work, but essentially they have tabs. You can always choose which way you combine them, and when you do combine them, not only do you get the positive borders that are cut with each individual die, but you get new borders that are then cut with the space in between. And by cutting all three at once, I actually got quite a few borders in one pass. So those borders can be used to pretty quickly fill in the front of a card. So that's what I did here with just the same pattern paper and then 3 different colors of borders. Another one of my crosshatch circles for the front of the card, and then I did a standalone ice cream cone on pop dots. I kept all the little circles that had popped out of one of the borders and then just dumped them on the card and went in and glued them down like confetti. I definitely like to work on the interiors of my pop-up cards first and then just use the leftover materials, the same colors and styling to create a simple lead-in for the front of the card. So this finished card is just a standard size. It'll mail in an A2 envelope. It's not particularly bulky and it shouldn't take any extra postage. And I love to end our assembly videos by showing a bunch of samples by our amazingly talented design team. This birthday card by Frances Byrne is a perfect example of using those decorator dies to create that dish of ice cream for the front of the card as well. And Sandy here used glittered ice cream and added stems to the cherries. So Kelly here used the dish's stencil feature to draw in the highlights, and then I also like how she made chocolate chip mint ice cream. Fran Sabad turned this one into a banana split. And another great birthday themed ice cream sundae, this one by Lois Bach. I am smitten with this card by Fran Sabad where she used soft colors and gave the look of sorbet. And then another card by Fran, this time using more bold colors with a metallic bowl. And you'll be able to use all of those decorator dies on your other pop-ups, other cards, other projects. Summerhill's painter here shows how nicely they fit on the rockin' rectangle. The Ice Cream Sundae pop-up die set will be available on our website and in a lot of your favorite stores starting January 31st, 2019. Thanks for watching. If you click on the website link, you'll go to KarenBurniston.com where you can find out information about purchasing these dies as well as links to all my other social media accounts. You can subscribe to this YouTube channel and check out some of my other videos. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.